Today we will be having our ancestor acknowledgement ceremony. So as today's service goes on, you will notice it's not like a traditional Sunday service. Most of it will be in Zazen. Please maintain as much silence as possible. There will be lead ushers for your row as we circumambulate the outside of the building to acknowledge our ancestors. We will be leaving and going out the south entrance and getting your shoes, and then going around the building 3 times with an incense. If you are allergic or can't carry incense, don't feel obligated to do so, but receive your incense, circumambulate following your usher. Provide the incense on the 3rd round to Reverend Jukai will be there to receive your incense. Hand it to her and she will place it in the bowl. Then walk one last time around and come in on the north side, the trail side of the building, and take your shoes off and leave them there. Then you will go to the Buddha Hall and hit the gong and then return to the Zendo until everyone has done so. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for choosing to be here. Today we're going to do an acknowledgement of the ancestors ceremony. And this will be the concluding moment for our fall practice period, even though it feels like we're firmly in winter. But we'll begin the winter practice period tomorrow. This is an important moment to mark. And one of the things that you see in spiritual tradition, I hope, is that it's coming from somewhere. It's not just coming from nowhere. It's not just one individual person's kind of flight of fancy of the moment, but rather deep strains of wisdom that are part of our common human inheritance. And there are many beautiful forms of wisdom. This is one of them. And in this particular lineage and in this particular line, we are the inheritors of certain methods of practice and certain modalities of spirituality that we have inherited from what we call our ancestors. And it's important to realize that ancestors are both our genetic ancestors, which need care and attending to. Whether your direct relationship with them was always 100% perfect and harmonious at every time or not, still, you owe your genetic life to theirs. And even if you can't, maybe you never knew, perhaps, one or both of your parents that it happened. Still, there is an honoring of that genetic lineage and also an honoring of those who actually cared for us. But pretty quickly, it moves into the unknown. In my case, I knew my great-grandmother on my mother's side. Her grandma, no idea. There's a name, I think, etched somewhere. That person's grandma, no idea at all. So pretty quickly, it fades off into we don't know. But still, the teachings say, pay attention to and give thanks and wish well for all of those ancestors, known and unknown. And this can be kind of a rough sell for some of us that have had very difficult relationships with folks in our families, let's say. But perhaps all the more to have a moment of just honoring and just respecting. And also, and maybe primarily, honoring our spiritual ancestors. The lineage of ancestors, as we say in this tradition. Our founding teacher is Shakyamuni Buddha, so that's 2,600 years ago. But in the transmission documents and in the stories, there were 7 historical Buddhas. One 100,000 years before Shakyamuni, one 200,000 years before that, one 300,000 years before that, one and on and into the mists of time, called the historical Buddhas. Who knows? So even though we have a pretty clear sense that there actually was a guy named Siddhartha Gautama who was a teacher, scholars are pretty confident that's true. Even if not, that's okay. But still we honor, and then we honor the mystery beyond that, before that. And since Shakyamuni's time, in our tradition, we say that there have been I am the 87th generation, and here's the 88th generation lineage holder from Shakyamuni's time. So when we go into the Buddha Hall, you'll see on the walls there several lists of names, and that's who's on those lists in the different lineages. So having a time to honor the known ancestors, my own transmitting teacher, James Millenford Roshi, and Gelek Rinpoche, transmitting the Galupa line of Tibetan training practice for us, and also my teacher's teachers, and my teacher's teacher's teachers, and teacher's teachers all the way. But important to understand, actually, that each of those ancestral teachers is simply a stand-in for an entire community, whose names we don't know, but we sing nonetheless. All of them are the ancestors, not just the names that got etched. for every name we know, there's a whole community of folks who are just as critical to the transmission of the wisdom of our line. So particularly all the names that are unsung and unknown, we make space for. In Dogen's fascicle, Shobo Genzo, he says in fascicle 88, titled Making Offerings to Buddhas, you become Buddhas by the merit of making offerings to Buddhas. How can a sentient being who has not made offerings to even one Buddha become a Buddha? There is no becoming a Buddha without cause. There is no becoming a Buddha without cause. Before that, centuries before that, ancestor Nagarjuna said, if you want the effect of becoming a Buddha, then recite one verse, chant one refuge, burn a single pinch of incense, or offer a flower. Even with such a small practice, you will certainly become Buddha one day. So what is it that we're going to do? What is this circumambulating thing about? Well, when I've concluded the introductory comments here, we'll begin a period of zazen, and the ushers will come and tap you, and there's a process whereby what we'll do is circumambulate the temple. And this practice really predates Buddhism. We don't really know the original origin of it. Most scholarship suggests it has to do with far distant past in relating to the movement of the sun and the planets and the cosmos itself. This makes some kind of intuitive sense to me. This business of taking the right side of the body and keeping it close to the truth, keeping it close to the wisdom, this is an essential motif that you'll see. As we circle around the temple together, we ask that you keep your right side toward the temple. And this is the tradition. Now, in the Buddha's time, whenever a disciple was going to take leave of the Buddha's presence, they would circumambulate 3 times like this. And when they would come into the Buddha's presence, they would circumambulate 3 times like this before taking a seat. We think that's pretty accurate. After the Buddha's death, that same practice of circumambulating was transferred to the stupas and to the reliquaries and to the monuments and totems of the Buddhist path, the Bodhi tree, for example. And later, the lineage-holding teachers began to be living embodiments of the wisdom tradition, and the same practice occurred. In fact, for those who were here last week at the Shuso Hosan, it's built into that ceremony that the disciple then circumambulates the teacher several times. So what is this doing? Well, one thing it's doing is it's physicalizing devotion. It's physicalizing a heartfelt connection. Some things are too deep for words. Some things, words, no matter how eloquent or poetic, the words just don't quite land the plane, do they? Sometimes words are perfect. I like a good word here and there myself. But some things are just beyond the reach. And so what will you do? Will you just give up and do nothing? That's an answer some people choose. But here we have a kinesthetic or a bodily language that we've inherited, this circumambulating practice that other traditions hold as well, by the way, I should say. This is not limited to just Buddhist practitioners that do this. This motif of pilgrimage, of moving your body in a specific pattern that has something to do with the cycles of the cosmos, something to do with the lineage, and something to do with a heartfelt feeling that perhaps words fail. It is said, too, that this is a way of generating vast merit. So you'll see pilgrims, say in the Tibetan tradition, they'll go to a certain place, and on their way there, every 3 steps, they'll make a full prostration in their tradition's manner, and then take another 3 steps and do another full prostration. And what they're doing is they're moving themselves towards a stupa. which can be quite large. And once they get there, they circumambulate it several times. Why would a person do this? I offer that it's a deeply human response to the mystery of being alive, with all the attendant joys and terrors therein. This generating of merit is taken very seriously in the Mahayana tradition. It's not really just some kind of celestial abacus tabulating right and wrong behaviors. It's not so crude and silly as that, but rather expressing love, and that expression actually matters. If nowhere else, it matters in our own hearts and in our own bodies, in ways that maybe we can or cannot really connect with at the moment. Many of us have gone through loss, the loss of a loved one. Many of us have gone through rites and rituals that at the time we could just barely make it through. But the fact that we made it through, and the fact that our bodies showed up that way, is a kind of nourishment, is a kind of comfort in a way. It's a kind of contact with what's happened that can be unpacked for many, maybe a lifetime. So in this way too, circumambulating the temple is like this. It's playing in that same key. I'm old enough now that my first teacher has passed away. And if you've ever met Daido Roshi, you're not going to. How strange. How profoundly odd. How wrong. And yet how natural, inevitable, and obvious. And by the way, if you really want to meet Roshi, simply meet him in your zazen. He's always there. But that aside, walking the path, now being old enough to know some people whose voices I can hear in my head that are now silenced and will not speak again. I can hear their whispers as I make the circumambulation and realize that generations back there are many voices I'll never know directly, but I can know intimately. I can actually walk with the feet of the ancestors on this sacred ground. I can breathe on behalf of the ancestors who no longer can as I circumambulate the temple. I invite you to do the same. It's an embodiment of refuge. It's one of the ways we have of physically expressing our practice. We have many ways here. What we just did, as I sometimes say, we could just kind of all walk in and sit down. Why do we have to line up and do all the stuff with the bells and the processing in? We all know what's going to happen. Because it helps to shape the moment, because it helps us to actually come into full contact with this liminal space of spiritual practice, of being human. Forget spiritual practice, being human's liminal enough. So what do you do when this is happening? Well, my hope and encouragement for you is that as we circumambulate together, at the bare minimum, be very mindful of your own experience as you walk. Pay attention to your breathing. Pay attention to your one point. Pay attention to your feet. Please feel the wind on your skin. Please love the sunlight that is still here with us as winter looms near. Be attentive to your body as you circumambulate. This in itself is expressing refuge and wisdom and compassion. And then perhaps recall your ancestors. It wouldn't surprise me if during the circumambulation, if you take it seriously, if some of the ancestors that you know come and say hi in some way, perhaps the sound of the wind in a branch, perhaps the feeling of the ground underfoot, perhaps a memory of that song Grandpa used to play, perhaps some teaching, some koan that really opened your heart from an ancestor from back in the 7th century in China. But allow space for the ancestors to come and walk with you for a time and in a way. And purely imaginative is the real thing. That it arises in your mind's eye means that it has arisen. Please honor it. You don't need more than that. And lastly, with the mindfulness of the walking, with perhaps the hands holding the ancestors, please do this for the sake of all beings, not just for yourself and your own connection to the ancestors and your own grief, perhaps. Not just for this temple and this community, as important to us as it may well be. And not just for the ancestors that we name and don't know the names of, but literally for all beings throughout space and time. Not just the humans, not just this realm, but literally throughout whatever multiverse they may be. Wherever space and time exist and beings suffer, include them in this little walk we're going to take. It's a deep practice if you allow it to be. If you actually allow yourself to play, which is what it is. But if you allow yourself to really play fully, you can come into contact with what? With yourself. With yourself, with reality, and maybe an ancestor or two along the way. Let's move now, facing each other, into a period of zazen. It is within this period of zazen that the circumambulation will take place.
strap on and get my sunglasses. It seems a bit sunny out there. Yeah.
inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha thank you. That concludes our ancestor ceremony. In a moment, the gong will ring for lunch, and we'll do our meal chant, so please stay for that. And any other announcements are on the daily snail.